and welcome to another South by Southwest preview of Friday Night Movie. We are with an incredible filmmaker today. We are with Zahida Pirani, who made a beautiful, beautiful film called El Carrito. Zahida is based in LA and New York, and she is as much a filmmaker and community organizer, and you can feel that spirit of community in every aspect of this beautiful short film. And as we do with all of our South by Southwest previews, we will dispense with the family stories and jump right into it. Zahida, welcome to the family.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you all.
It is so wonderful to have you here. And we're here with Becky and Lily and Allie. And we're just going to dive right into some of the themes of the film that struck us. I don't know which one of us wants to go first in this moment. I know everyone has things they want to say. Lily, Becky, do either of you want to jump in first? This is hilarious. Lily will cut everyone off all the time, and then I turn to her and she's like, no, I don't know.
I don't have anything to say.
I'm good. That's fine.
I you know what? I'll start talking, and then that way Lily can Lily will get inspired.
I'll feel prompt to interrupt. I had the privilege of watching this with our mom, who was an immigrant. She came to the U.S. seeking asylum when she was 7 from Cuba with her parents and her siblings, and so there's definitely something she identifies there in the film. And then the fact that her dad sold his own, handmade shirts out of a cart and to different people that he knew would buy them as he was trying to work in the fashion industry, and eventually became a women's clothing designer. But he was moonlighting doing that as he also, was getting work anywhere else he could. And that our dad's grandfather, who also was an immigrant, from Eastern Europe, he was selling fish out of a cart in New York City. Wow. And then my mom lived in Brooklyn for a few years and then grew up in Puerto Rico. And our dad, his family stayed in the Lower East Side. And then my dad was born on the Lower East Side and then grew up in Brooklyn. So the fact that there's
Lily
so much of this movie.
Name every single place our parents and their ancestors lived.
The movie takes. I just think it's funny. I'm just going to say that mom, there's nothing very specific in the movie necessarily, and if you're not from New York City, you might not notice. But you had to see mom being like Bronx, Queens, yeah,
that's and so amazing. Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so I think that, and I was sitting there being like, what? Maybe that's Chicago. How do you know where that is? I was like, I guess it's New York City.
It's definitely New York,
right? I'm like, I guess it's New York City, but what do you mean? She's like, Queens. Okay, yeah. And
wow.
So
yeah.
That sort of familiarity was really interesting to watch.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. Yeah. Cause it's like so many immigrant stories start in New York. So I was going to ask you where did they immigrate? And so that's really special. And yeah, I feel like it's such a thing in New York. You when you don't have anything, you do the street vending, that's how a lot of people get their starts. And so that's so amazing.
So here's an opening question there on that theme. So here's us. We are Jewish, Cuban, Ashkenazi Jews, right? Like that's where, so our family definitely came through New York. But I imagine there are other people with and we're saying this speaks to us and spoke to our family. I imagine, or are you getting reactions from other people from other communities, even though this focused on one community? Is it really a really universal story that you're telling?
Yeah, I mean, that was the intention. I really wanted it to be universal. So I do think one reason why I made this film is because I do think immigrant stories kind of get funneled into this American dream story all the time. And the character in the film, Nellie, really believes in the American dream and she wants her piece of the pie. That's why she's hustling every day. But the other piece of this film was to show sort of this other story about the immigrant experience, which is about community. And I don't think that gets highlighted as much, like that importance of sort of coming together. And like, not everybody gets their American dream, to be honest, I think the story of was it your grandfather who ended up being a woman's clothing designer? that's wonderful, but that doesn't happen for everybody. You know, a lot of people just sell on the street for the rest of their lives. And I think there's this alternate story that we don't often see for the immigrant experience, and that is about community and like finding human connection. And that was the bigger story I wanted to tell. The more universal story is like this woman who's very untrusting. What happens when she's put in a situation where something is taken away from her, where the American dream may not happen for her, but what will she learn, you know? And so we don't know at the end of the film what she'll decide, but we do know she sees people around her a little bit differently. And, you know, people do offer her something, and that is a sense of connection or community. And so, yeah, I do think, you know, to your question, yeah, I think people do feel a connection to her. And she does, you know, it's hard to put yourself out there when you want something so badly. And I think she takes a leap of faith. And I think every day we all sort of, if we want something, we have to trust or take a leap of faith in our own lives.
And so to situate the story, we have Nellie. She starts off the film. We're going to do a little bit of spoilers because not everybody will have the privilege of being at South by Southwest. So she starts off with selling from a push cart that's it's in one of those old, what we call a grandma cart, and the wheels are coming off. And then she takes savings and buys this really nice cart, and then the cart goes missing. What in that moment where she is already not trusting people and then accusing people, especially when she accuses the woman who has a cart that doesn't even look like her cart, what was your feeling about how the audience would react to that, to this main character who we're supposed to feel something for, but who is in some ways like lashing out in this moment of mistrust and desperation?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going for is exactly that. Like, you see her level of mistrust and desperation, you know, she's sort of like, and I think, again, like a lot of us, when we're in a really hard state or a difficult part of our lives, it's just like, you just are so fed up. You're like, I'm just going to go for the next person. Like, I wish you would, you know what I mean? I wish you would bring it on so that I can just go for you, because her life just sucks right now, you know? And I think she's sort of in a state of mind where it's like, I'm just tired of it. And I'm going to lash out. I'm going to take it out on the next person, you know? And, you know, I set it up so that she does have a conflict with the woman in the beginning, but, you know, she kind of half knows it's her cart, and she kind of half doesn't know, you know, and she's kind of testing the waters. And I think sometimes when we're in that state of mind, that's what we do, you know, and we do that a lot with our loved ones. I'm sure you all have that experience as, you know, family.
I get it from this trio of people all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you do that a lot, I think, in moments where you just are tired of everything. And that was what I wanted to come across. I don't think she's just an awful person. I think there's a reason why she's so pissed. It's kind of like she was promised something. She had this illusion of the American dream. And I wanted to play with that idea too, of like, you know, there is this American dream that all of us, whether you're an immigrant or not, have been sold. And in these times in our country, is that really still something that we can aspire to? Or do people have equal access to the American dream anymore? I don't know. I wanted to put that out there because I think for all people in this country, that's a question right now.
I think it's definitely a question, and I would love to explore that more with everyone and particularly with you. But before we do that, I wanted to circle back to something that you said, because it brought up a question that I had, which is you talked about Nellie as kind of being this like very untrusting person, and she lashes out right at this woman who she thinks stole her cart. And then there's that moment when I mean, spoilers here. So if you haven't seen the film yet, like turn off now. Where Arturo and his mom return the cart, and Arturo has taken the cart trying to help his mom, and his mom is like, no, this is not what we do. And the mom asks in that moment, are you going to report him? And she pauses for many beats before she answers, and she thinks really hard, and she gives like this imperceptible shake of her head that she's not going to. And I wondered kind of like what you feel like in that moment that Nellie's like idea of community is changing, that maybe she's willing to kind of like open up her trust circle just this tiny bit more because Arturo has returned the cart, but maybe she hasn't. So can you speak at all about, what you were hoping or thinking Nellie might be thinking in that moment?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I do think in that moment, she recognizes herself in the boy a little bit, right? So she just did something in the previous scene. She does something where she accuses somebody of something. She does something awful. And then she's shown compassion, right, by this group of vendors.
The bottle of water, I thought, was just a very beautiful moment.
Oh, thank you. Wow. I so appreciate that you all notice those little details.
It's exactly what you're saying, is that they have no reason to, like, she's really stepped over the line. And then in that moment, they're saying, it's okay. We get it.
Yeah.
Or we forgive you, or we're here, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think that moment of compassion sort of is the moment she opens up her mind. And that's why with Arturo, she also says to the mother, like, the mother kind of tugs at Arturo because he doesn't say sorry right away. And she goes, no, it's okay. And so I didn't want her to make a dramatic change because it's just too much in a short, I think, to expect that from her and for her to shift totally and be like, thank you. I really appreciate you at the end for bringing this back. I don't think that's what she would do. But I do think if she hadn't had that moment before the little boy returns the cart, that she wouldn't have been able to even have that thought of, okay, let me show some identification or compassion or empathy. And I think she does by sort of, she looks at the boy and I think she kind of thinks about like, wow, like I was just shown something, maybe I shouldn't be so harsh, because the old Nellie would have probably ripped him apart. But she doesn't do that. And so I had hoped that she sees herself, and again, like the story and the characters take a life of their own, but the way I thought of it was, she sees a little bit of herself in him, and like he did something bad too. And, she's not going to beat him up for it. Like she would have maybe before.
It's a really incredible moment that they have in that exchange.
If I could pick apart that moment a little bit more. So Elie Zavala is the actor that plays Nellie. There's that little nod of the face that she does in that moment where you're waiting was so moving, and there's so much like tension and release at the same time in there. You're working with 7 minutes and you're deciding to stretch out that moment and leave it all on the facial, like this slight facial expression. I would love to know as someone who's composing the film, how you make that decision to use that precious amount of time for that.
Yeah, well, I think I could do it because Elie is such a wonderful actor. And so first of all, it's that, like, I knew she could handle those moments. And even with the water, that scene, there's no dialogue in that scene. So I really had to rely on the performances. And I was very lucky to collaborate with such an incredible cast. And so, yeah, that moment to me, I stretched it out because that's her moment of sort of transformation, like where that's a very significant moment for her in her own mind. And I think, as filmmakers, we're always trying to externalize the internal. That's what they teach you in film school, right? Externalize the internal. And so the way to do that is by like giving it, as you said, enough weight by staying on her and seeing her shift. because her answer to that is a shift in her, that we have not seen yet. It's a tiny shift, so it wasn't like a big moment. But yeah, I think Ellie's performance was excellent, that she was able to convey that.
That's great. I want to get Becky and Lily in here on this. Beck, you look like you've got something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah. So shifting away from talking just about the story, which the other thing that impressed me so much about this film is the production value. Now, I know short films don't have big budgets, and so I'm assuming you were working on a very lean budget and had to be creative, yet the production value is so high in it. It everything looks very deliberate and very beautifully put together. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the behind the scenes process of how you created the look of the film and achieved all that everything.
Yeah, thank you for that, Becky, because my vision was I wanted a very high production value film that felt like it was beautiful cinematically. That was very important to me as an artist, but then also to have an authenticity to it and feel like it's a real world. Like, I mean, you come from documentary. I actually come from a documentary background. So for me, like making it feel very real was very important to me. So what I did is, because I have a community organizing background, I basically brought my two worlds together, my community organizing world and my filmmaking world. And those two worlds are brought together. And I think, in terms of the visuals, like my DP, Mark Patterson, is extremely talented. And we really, I think, connected creatively and had a similar vision in terms of visuals. And then, my production designer, which I also owe a lot to, is Karina Kaufman Gutierrez. And she's actually never done production design before, but she runs a street vendor organization in New York. And, wow. But she is artistically inclined. And so I kind of put folks that didn't have filmmaking experience in leadership roles on this film, because I knew they would bring a certain beauty, a certain authenticity, and a certain aesthetic that maybe a production designer who's never known a street vendor wouldn't be able to do. And so she worked very closely actually with street vendors. A lot of what you see, and this goes to the money question, the budget question, all of that was donated by vendors, the carts, the food, everything. I mean, that was minimal. Like the production value, I think the production design and the costume design is fabulous. And Karina did a lot with very little. And that's because the whole street vending community was behind this film. Like we had street vendors on set who were creative consultants and, really helped us create the world. So I think it's because of folks in the community. And then, for example, the shop where where Nellie goes to buy her cart, that's a real shop just a couple blocks from my house. Like that's a bike shop actually. And the guy who plays Juan, the guy who sells her the cart, that's his shop. Like that's where he works. That's his workshop. Wow. And I just felt like I worked with the casting director. I felt like I wasn't finding the right actor for that role. And I was just like, you know what? I should just go with Eduardo, because he is Juan. Like he has that New York attitude. He's like done this a million times. He's like tired of people coming in and not buying his stuff. And so I thought he was great. So that shop, I think, is gorgeous, right? It's like the production value is upped because we were shooting and because people let us into their homes and their businesses. And I didn't have to do production design as much. I didn't have to, like, even the home where you see the cross, and that's all.
So there's this. So sorry, please speak about the home, because that's one of the spaces that I really felt the production value, because a lot of the times in narrative films, you have a set dressing, right, and props, and spaces feel very empty and very cold when you're honestly in low budget films. I think it's a common mistake, and this was so warm and rich, and I was really curious about that.
Can I throw one question on top of that? So you made another film, a documentary, Judith, and the kitchen and the home in Judith and the home in which Nellie lives look remarkably similar. And I only saw the trailer for Judith after I saw El Carrito, but I almost want to say, is it the same house?
It's not the same house, but some of Judith's things are there. So Judith was also a big part of this film because I told her I wanted to create a story. And, you know, the idea for El Carrito came from me hanging out with Judith doing the documentary. And she was always concerned her cart would get stolen. It's like a constant concern for street vendors. So that's where I got that idea. And she actually, I actually shared versions of my script with her to get feedback and stuff. So, but going to the home itself, yeah, Judith was one of the people, maybe you saw some of her stuff, but no, I mean, so with the home, that was somebody, you know, local person's home. One of my producers knew somebody and they were like, sure, you can use our home to shoot. And so some of the elements there are actually from the actual home. Like you see the cross, and you see the sort of stands in the kitchen, and those all belong to the Muñez family. That's their home. But then Karina, you know, she just added stuff to it. So she was really good at seeing, you know, and like being a community organizer. I mean, these are the people I know and work with and see every day, and Karina too. And so we just know what's real. And that's all we used is like our own experience, and worked with people so yeah, I mean, we just brought in, I think Karina just brought in a bunch of stuff from vendors and tried, and, you know, because Karina works with vendors, she knows what a vendor's home looks like, and what their kitchen looks like. So she brought in
the giant pot on the stove.
Yeah. So I think that's what it was. It was a combination of what was already there and then adding in the elements to make it feel even more like a vendor's home or like the character's home.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Lil, I feel like
Lil.
I'm just like waiting for you to keep talking.
By the way, this is a big deal. You have twice now talked Lily into total speechlessness.
Wow.
That means her level of focus, Lily's level of focus.
It's not about focus.
Not focus, but like Lily is basically
captivated.
Well,
captivated.
I do have a follow-up, Lil, if you need a beat.
Lily's processing.
Yeah, while you process, which is that, so given your background in documentary film and the fact and your doc film, Judith, I'm seeing like a blending here. In that crossover, in that space between fiction and nonfiction. I'm not going to say documentary, between that fiction and nonfiction space, in order to really bring this story to life. And I know when you talk about, when you talk about the production design, there's really that blend because you're using real homes and real locations. How many of the actors were actually non-actors? Was it just Eduardo, or were there other people that were not trained actors in the film? I'm so curious because I feel like that's also like I think about Nomadland, for example, like this talking about your film, it's really bringing up where it's this blend of,
I thought a lot about that,
right, of fiction and nonfiction and blending of actors and non-actors. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want me to just focus on the actors part? Because there's
any part of it, any aspect of it. I mean,
yeah, there was a lot of blending of fiction and nonfiction. I have tons of stories. I can share one or two with you, but yeah, in terms of the actors, so Eduardo was probably one of the major actors that was a non-actor. So one of the major performers that was a non-actor. role of Nellie by Ellie Zavala she's an actor. She's a trained actor. Mm-hmm. Same with the father, Jose Phoebus, and Idalia Limon, who is the rival vendor, and then Arturo the boy. But one thing we did have was a bunch of vendors who also played roles and were non-actors, and then a lot of background. The background, they're actually they're just people in the community who didn't even realize they were going to be in a movie until later. So one story I have is that, the scene in the plaza where she finally has her cart and it's like her peak moment of success, right? And like the sun is shining on her. She's like, the music is playing, she's got her cart. And that scene, the way I wrote it is we had a lot of people gathering around her to buy tacos. The problem was when we got to that scene, we didn't have any background actors lined up. So we had I don't know, my producers just didn't have people. And so what we did is somebody said, I don't know if it was one of my producers or my first AD, they said, why don't we have her selling those tacos? Because they're actual tacos that one of the street vendors made. Why don't we have her sell those for $1 a plate, which is a really good deal. And so we did that. And so like everybody swarmed in the plaza. Everybody was swarming around thinking she's a real vendor, not even noticing the camera, and like buying the tacos. So in that scene where you see everybody gathering, the majority of those people are just from the community. They're like just from the plaza. And so that's an example of how we used sort of blending of the nonfiction, as you put it, Becky. I think I prefer that actually, like blending of nonfiction and fiction. So thank you. I'm going to use that again.
Feel free. I think that's a fantastic scene, and it's so well shot. It's so well shot. So
thank you.
And really raising the production value of this film are, moments like that are so well constructed.
So to the extent that I am in any way a creator, I am a musician, sort of. What do you guys think?
You're a musician. You bang on things.
Yeah, I'm a drummer, but I pay attention a lot to sound and score, but I don't know anything about how they're made. But to me, the sounds of the city were so clear, so subtle, and so there. But I could also hear everything that I needed to hear. And then everything I needed to hear for the story. And then there were moments where, like the plaza, where you hear the city, like you can hear the buzz of the city. And then there are these moments that are totally almost quiet. And I think that one of the most captivating things that goes along with the visuals and how beautifully it's shot is the sound. I think is out of this world in this film.
I completely agree. I just want to, and before you even answer, I just want to say, I absolutely noticed the sound design and mix as well.
Becky wants to make sure she gets credit from the teacher.
Because I'm going to bring this up. No, I want to bring this.
I'm
looking at your IMDb. I'm looking at your IMDb credits, and I see some sound department credits, and I'm going, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I just wanted.
I mean, she turned her heater off for the podcast.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I'm seeing.
She knows what she's doing.
I'm seeing
Lily doesn't even ask
sound
her kids to
I'm seeing some
room.
sound mixer credits. So now I'm like, oh. I also worked in audio post production for the last 2 years, and I will say having a good sound mix and sound design is not obvious to all people.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think you're right. So you want me to just talk about sound then?
Yeah. Tell us all about it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I so appreciate that because I think, sound is such an important part of storytelling. And I think people don't talk about it enough. So I think it's great. I from the beginning, knew that I didn't want music likely because the kind of story I was telling, I didn't see score. But so what I thought was, why don't we use the soundscape of the city as the film score so that emotional and tonal beats are being met through. So like, for example, when she sees the cart she thinks is hers with the rival vendor, we hear a jackhammer, right? And it's like the jack, and that's a sound we actually captured. And so I have to give big props to my, on-set sound production mixer, Brandon Sequeira, because first of all, he's like a genius and he's really good at what he does. And he totally got that vision and was really, and then I'm really lucky because coming out of UCLA, we have a program that really emphasizes all aspects of filmmaking, including sound. So I got to work with one of the greats, Cece Hall, who was nominated. She's one of the first women in sound in this industry who is a legend. And she teaches at UCLA, and she, I got to, she helped me, and I worked with her and she helped me like think about it. Fred Helm, who's also from UCLA. And so I've had really great mentors, I think, who come from the sound world, but also understand like how a director knows how to work with a director. And then I worked with the great Ronald Eng, who was actually my sound designer and sound mixer. And he works with like David Lynch, So
wow,
my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't just me, but yeah, the vision was there, but I had amazing people. I surrounded myself with amazing artists of sound.
And it's so wonderful how you give credit where credit's due, but the director is the captain of the ship. And you had to bring each of these people together and know that they were right for your project and still, translate your vision to them.
Yeah.
So we see it.
That leads me to another question, because a director is exactly what Becky said, the captain of the ship, the leader of the team. And we've had the opportunity to speak to some directors recently on the show about leadership and how they handle a set and how they lead on a set. There's a video of Talia Osteen who directed a film that's on Hulu, Sex Appeal, and there's a video she put on her Instagram of her on her first day talking to the crew and setting the tone and it was a clear leadership moment. On the other hand, there's this side of the Hollywood that all you hear about is the toxic environment of sets. And so, but I feel like we've encountered lately people who really are paying attention to the leadership dimension. What's your leadership approach? And then I want to make sure Lily gets to ask her question, because Lily's finally marinated it.
So
Just being polite. I have it the whole time. I have it written down.
So as you know, I come from a community organizing background. So a lot of my values for leadership come from there. And so, I think there's a balance. I think, first of all, I understand that I don't know everything, and that one of my roles is to find the right people who get the story and can elevate the film, right? So I can't be an expert in every single element of filmmaking. I think that's what's beautiful about filmmaking, is it's a collaborative art form. However, I do understand I need to set the vision, right? So just like we talked about sound, I had a vision for the sound, but I needed to work with people to implement that. And so I just think when you're working with collaborators, that's what they are. They're collaborators, right? It's not just like I am the dictator and you have to do what I say because I know everything, because I don't. I mean, you'd have to be 100 years old to really be an expert in every aspect of filmmaking. And so I'm not under that illusion, but I do think I have a vision when I go in. And I think communicating that vision is really important, and being open to thinking about things a little differently, but then also knowing when you have to make certain decisions that are hard, that maybe some people wouldn't agree with, and that's okay. I think on set, yes, I think, we've heard a lot about toxic set environments, especially with like the union fight that was recently going on. And I think that's really important to me, is to create a healthy environment, because this is how I see it. Like, I'm trying to create the best film possible, but I don't know what the end result will be. You can never predict if the film gods will be with you or not. But what I do know is I can make the process enjoyable, right? And I can create an environment where people can perform at their best. And that's really important. So, I had people on set who were super experienced, but had never been in a community like this, right? And didn't understand the community. And then I had people who had never been on a set, but understood this community. And so, one of the biggest challenges I had is bringing my two worlds together, and they clashed a little bit because these two worlds operate very differently. Like decision making is very different on both sides. But what ended up happening is like, I talked to folks and I really had to like make people understand that like I was doing this very intentionally. And in the end, I think both sides grew and learned from each other. And because of that, we had a better film. And so I think doing things a little bit outside the box is also something I like to do, and challenging folks in a different way. And so, just to create an environment for that where everybody's voice is heard is really important to me.
That's great. Well, speaking of voices and sound, I want to
Yes.
I want to let the scratchiest voice of all of us ask you some questions. I also want to be mindful of your time. Do you have a little bit more time to hang with us?
I do, and I'm really having fun, so I don't
okay.
mind.
Okay, good. Yay. We're so happy.
Yeah, because
we're having so much fun too.
So the cart, it's the name of the film, and it's so important in the film. Back to the scene that I think it grabs everyone, right, where she's selling, and of course how you've now described it, that scene is even more rich than it was when we were watching the film. To me, the cart is the very representation of this American dream. And when she sets out her tablecloth, her Guatemalan like hand-woven tablecloth to put on her stand that she can open on the cart, and she's able to represent herself in her dream. It's not this metal blue granny cart, but it's her own. It's really something that's hers. I thought that detail was so beautiful. And then, the idea that you're also subverting the American dream and what it represents, but to me, the cart clearly is representative of that dream in many ways, especially when it gets lost and then by community is brought back. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on what the cart meant to you or to Nellie, to the dream.
Well, I love hearing that. And I think I'm going to use that too, Lily, actually, because sometimes when we make films, it's like so subconscious on a subconscious level, but you're right. The cart does represent sort of her American dream. And I love how you talk about it, like her making it her own, right? Like putting that,
the risk she takes, she put all of her savings goes into it. It's a huge
she's
risk.
Almost in love with this cart. You know what I mean? Like when she's buying it, she's looking at it, and it's like, because it represents more, like what you're saying. For her, it's just a representation of what can be, right? And so I think you said it better than I could, actually. And I mean, one thing I will add is I was intentional about the cart being a character. So I did that with sound, and I did that because the sound of the new cart is very different from the sound of the old cart. And we played with that. Yeah, we played with that
brilliant.
In the room, in the sound mixing room. And so that was intentional, to have the cart be a character. And then the opening scene is the cart, it's the cart's wheel. And to me, I always thought that wheel, that annoying wheel, which was going to end up breaking later, is sort of where she's at. Like she's about to break,
Right.
That wheel is loose, and she's going, and she keeps going, and she's going to run out of steam, and one day it will break. And she does kind of break when she accuses that other vendor.
Right.
So that's sort of how I thought about the cart. But I think you're right too. It is sort of like basically her representative of her American dream, and her trying to take that, and that you can't have, the ending is like, you can't have an American dream without support from others, right? Like, so I grew up in a working class immigrant community, and the way we survived is by helping each other. And you can't survive unless you do that. And I think she gets back her American dream because somebody helps her out. But yeah, what were you going to say?
No, and I'm touching on that a little bit. and I don't know as much about the current street vendor community in New York, but it seemed the way it was shown in the film that it's a lot of women.
Yes.
And in the end, it's a woman that a group of women that show her compassion when her wheel is literally breaking, and hands her the water bottle.
Yeah.
And gives her a place to shelter when the police are coming. And then, which is obviously a major stress. And then at the end, a woman who comes and brings her the cart back. And I was wondering about this new American dream or modern American dream that is not just one person hustling against the rest, but this community, how women as a community fit into that, and what you saw, your experience being exposed to this community.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, from personal experience growing up, but then also just living there, that's, and it's women, this is also, she was inspired by the women I knew growing up, who carried everything. They were the primary breadwinner. They were the primary caretaker. They were the primary everything. And it's a lot. And I think a lot of women can identify with that, right? Like we hold multiple roles in our society, in our family, and the expectations are high for us. And so I think, that was very important to convey, but yet we're often on the bottom of the food chain. We're often not the ones who are put to the front. And so, that idea of like women's solidarity and supporting each other is definitely something that I have seen, especially in my community organizing days. Often it was the women on the front lines, like they had families, they had jobs, but they were also the activists. And I think my short documentary, Judith, Portrait of a Street Vendor, covers that, because Judith was that. She did everything. And then on top of that, she was an activist and community organizer. And I'm like amazed. She would only sleep like 3 hours a night.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, she would not sleep. I was always shocked at how very little she slept, because she wanted to do all of these things. She wanted to be a successful businesswoman. She wanted to have her girls have a good life and be a good mother. And she wanted to serve the community, and further her people's cause. And so I think women do it all the time. I think, women in this community do it all the time, but we don't often see how amazing they are, and we don't often get to put that on screen. And so I'm really glad that's something that you're bringing up, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this film, is that these women are incredible people. And they're really the leaders in our community.
It definitely comes through. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before you're having fun with us. So one of the great traditions of Friday Night Movie is we have some Friday Night Movie games that we play.
Wow.
And we now a lot of the times we're talking about like horror comedies or teen coming of age stories, not necessarily a beautiful meditation on the American dream. So we so it's always
rarely
a funny
do anything that's actually highbrow.
Yeah. So
okay.
So
good content.
I can be lowbrow too if you need me to.
We do both. We do both. I was making it sound like
I'm joking.
We only do
it's like 80% lowbrow.
And also we do a highbrow version.
But which is surprising, because we're clearly a little bit smart. I feel like we when we prepare, we can talk to smart people.
Don't let me in with when we prepare. I prepare. Show. Every time we do the show, I'm prepared.
This is what I do for a living. I'm always prepared. All right.
Stop. Oh, for this topic, yes. I thought you meant for the podcast.
No. I like
none of us do
movies
this
for a living, so therefore I'm always prepared. I'm always in preparation mode.
None of us podcast for a living. You got to spend money to lose money. Okay, so we play a game. The signature game of Friday Night Movie is called Buy, Rent, or Meh. Okay,
rent, or what?
Meh. Like, meh.
Okay, got it.
So that's the official rating system also of everything. If movie, do you buy it? Do you rent it? I mean, for kids who don't know, that's like what people used to do with movies. And then meh can be whatever you want to make meh mean. So it doesn't need to be the lowest ranking. It could just be indifference. It could be something.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and we always like to ask something really difficult. So it's not like we're going to ask you, to rank order the first 3 Karate Kid movies, right? Like that's pretty obvious. But
It is very obvious. There is a right answer for that one.
And so, but also, even though I'll follow the rules and Becky will follow the rules and Allie will follow the rules, Lily will never follow the rules. So you're also allowed to break the rules. But you wrote, directed, and edited this film.
Mm-hmm.
So buy, rent, and meh. So you get to assign each one of these a single one of these values. It's zero sum between them. Directing, writing, or editing. Which one do you buy? Which one do you rent? And which one do you meh?
Writing and directing, buy.
Okay. Good. Cheating right away. I like that. Admirable.
Okay, good. It's not even cheating. It's about doing things outside the box.
Okay. I love it.
And then what was the other one?
Editing.
To rent. Oh, editing.
Editing.
And it's to rent or meh. Those
rent.
are your choices now.
Rent.
Rent.
I would do it, but I would really prefer to work with somebody in the future.
Okay, cool. That's cool. All right. Now let's get a little culinary, but we're specifically not going to go anywhere near the amazing food you showed in this film.
Okay.
But we are going to go to New York street food. Okay.
How much did you want a tamale after watching that movie?
So badly.
Oh, tamale verde. God. Oh my God. When she said that you had the verde option, I was like, oh.
That's what you would go for. Okay.
I mean, I'll go for the sweet corn ones too. I mean,
tacos.
Our grandmother used to make amazing ones.
Our grandma made really good.
Oh, yum.
Leaves and they'd be frozen and then they'd be frozen and then delivered across the country to the various family members who wanted them.
Wow, amazing.
Whoever you were visiting.
Cuban?
I guess they were Cuban. They were Cuban, but yeah, they were there.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom would bring a cooler to wherever we were visiting to deliver them to who's.
Oh my God, I love that. Yum.
So let's take a steer far away from those things. New York City, you're on a corner by maybe Madison Square Garden or something. Pretzels, hot dogs, or those weird hot nuts.
Okay, so
buy, rent, and meh.
So which ones I would buy?
Which one you would buy?
You have to assign one of them a buy, one of them a rent, and one of them a meh.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. So what did you say? Pretzels,
hot dogs, and those weird bags of hot nuts that they serve.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the cashews or the ones that are kind of reddish colored?
Yeah.
The reddish color. The reddish color.
Yeah.
I love those nuts, actually.
Those nuts are so good. I don't care what they're made out of.
Good. I always feel sick afterwards, though, because I think it's
because the oil that they fry them in is the same oil they're using for the hot dogs or something else. That's chemical. I don't know what they're boiled.
The nuts are fried in sugar.
In sugar.
Or they're roasted. They're
roasted in sugar. But whatever that batter is not good for your gut.
No, it's not gluten free, and I'm supposed to be gluten free. It's not any. It's all the bad stuff, but that I would buy because it's so good. And they're hot, and in the winter, yum in New York. So the hot nuts buy. I would say pretzels, meh. And then hot dogs, that's hard, but rent. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Interesting.
All right.
Depends on the hot dog vendor too. I mean, that's the thing with vendors is it depends on where I'm going. Because some of the hot dog vendors are excellent and then some of them are meh.
Well,
fair.
Zahida Pirani, you have been such a wonderful addition to the Friday Night Movie family.
Oh, this was so much fun. I want to be part of your family.
You don't get it. You're
not a choice. Done.
You should hang.
I always tell this to the people who have been on the show. I'm like, you don't get it. You
can't escape now.
I don't mind.
We like to close out with a section that we call shout outs and recs, which is an opportunity to shout out either more of your amazing work, but will, of course, our rec is automatically El Carrito, which is premiering at South by Southwest on
I assume
March
people can
12th.
Get tickets to see it, right? Online.
And people who are getting the online festival or doing the film festival.
I highly encourage people to get tickets to watch this.
Absolutely beautiful.
We will be promoting it.
And so you can tell people about it, but I've just told people about it, so you're free from having to do that too if you want. But it can be anything, like you know, you can also just say like what shows you're watching on Netflix or whatever you want. But I'll give you a second because I'll let somebody else start first, and then you can really come up with your idea. Becky, what is your rec for today or your show?
Well, I actually forgot that I started watching The French Dispatch the other day.
I don't know if that bodes well for the French Dispatch.
I don't think that's a good sign.
Don't even know what words you're
for
saying
the Dispatch.
right now.
No, it's the new Wes Anderson.
The new Wes Anderson, and I would say we need to go over and watch it at Shai's house on a much larger television because there's so much happening in each shot, in each frame of that movie that it is very hard to track, and it's extremely strange, but not in a bad way, in a very Wes Anderson-y way. And all I can say is that I watched about half of it and then I needed a break, and I was very tired and I needed a break. But the half I watched was extremely rich and interesting. There's so much to look. There's so much to keep track of that's going on, just mise en scène wise, not like story wise, but just mise en scène wise. But what I did see, I really enjoyed. So cool. I guess it's like a half rec. I'll finish it maybe.
Keep everybody guessing. Lily, how about you? What's your recommendation?
Besides this film, then I haven't had a chance to watch from Very Much Else this
that's because you spent 3 hours watching the Batman, and
because Shai peer pressured me from an ocean away yesterday to go watch Batman, the new Batman, Patman, as Becky said, Pattinson Batman,
the Patman,
Such
a good name for it.
It is 3 hours, so I didn't know that going into it.
It's the opposite of a short that's a meditation with every second counted.
No, they didn't count. Although you could have edited this film better for sure. I can guarantee that. So, but it was, I hadn't been to a theater I went to a theater once in the last, I think 3.5-4 years, because I don't normally go to the theater anyways here where I live. So it was extra special. And the last time I saw a movie was The Paw Patrol. So this was, it would just, I have to say, more than the film being back. And I know people have been saying like the pandemic and theaters have not been a high priority of mine during the global pandemic. However, there is something to be said for being back in the dark cinema and watching something on the big screen and knowing there's sharing that experience with the people. And I was like, it is magical. It really is. And so I do hope, of course, for the film industry that that's something that can just become normal again. I mean, I know there's bigger fish to fry in the world right now, but that is something that is quite special, that experience. So
I agree.
I'm so excited. Your film will be premiering in person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so special to be able to.
Special. I feel so lucky because some of my colleagues who made films in previous years have not even had in-person festivals. So
and Sundance this year was not in person.
Nope. And so I'm really excited because this is South by Southwest coming back.
It's really, really special.
Wild.
Yeah.
Allie, your rec. What about you?
In addition to this film, obviously, the Trojan Horse Affair podcast. Has anyone listened to this yet? It's the folks at Serial, and Shai's looking at me like I'm a stranger.
We live at the same house. We spend a lot of time together. And I have these moments where I don't know you.
And you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on in those AirPods. It could be anything. It's by the people who did Serial, or at least some of them. And it's this fascinating 8-installment podcast about a major news event in England where an anonymous letter was sent to the Birmingham school district outlining an Islamic plot to radicalize the schools. And was it in fact a plot, or was it revenge, or was it someone? Yeah, it's just fascinating. So I definitely recommend it.
All right,
the Trojan Horse Affair.
Trojan Horse
Zahida,
Affair.
You have now heard. Well, everyone's recommended. Mine's just going to be Batman. I really liked it. We did a reaction episode of Batman. If you want to see us, if you have 25 minutes to kill and you want to, that's not one. I mean, we enjoyed it, but it's not one where we handle with the care and love that we did your amazing, beautiful film. But what about you? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, I was thinking as you were. So I recently saw Worst Person in the World in the theater.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yes,
I
I mean, I
really
guess
loved it.
you're recommending it, so I guess it's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. No, I'm recommending it. I agree.
You were not the first person on this podcast that's a guest that recommends it. It is something that is high on the list for me.
Well, it was highly recommended by some friends, and I went into the theater to go watch it, and it was really worth it. And I just think it was really well told. And the protagonist struggle, and I thought it was good. And then I watched the Oscar-nominated shorts in the theater.
Oh, amazing. That's
yeah,
really cool.
It was really cool. And the two I would recommend from there is The Long Goodbye. Riz Ahmed is in that one, and
wow.
fabulous. And it's really different than most shorts that you'll see. And then The Dress was excellent. So I recommend those two out of, like, if you're going to watch the Oscar-nominated shorts, those two were my tops.
Awesome.
This is the most excited I've been for this year's Oscars since they were announced. Yeah. So now I feel like I've got something to root for.
Awesome.
All right, Zahida, where can people follow you and follow your amazing work?
So I'm on Instagram. You can go to my handle, which is Zahida.Pirani. So my first and last name.
Awesome. And we'll have it in the show notes for everybody listening.
Awesome.
And I'll just go quickly around. Allie, do you want people to follow you?
You can. I don't say a whole lot, but you can find me on Instagram at @AtomBros.
That's Allie. We have to explain all of our names to guests. That's Allie's maiden name. Becky, where can people follow you?
At PaperBKPrincess on Twitter.
They can follow you, not necessarily hear from you, but they'll follow.
They can follow me. I retweet stuff.
And Lily, where can people follow you?
You can follow me at Chichi K Gomez on Twitter.
But I feel like if people,
if all people need an explanation,
if people were on,
Zahida.
but I feel like if someone was following me on Twitter, and it's like, if you wanted to reach out to me, you find me on Twitter, you can DM me. I'll, like that's really what it means.
Becky's inviting you to slide into her DMs. Lily, though, for
in an
Zahida, I think you
appropriate
need
way.
to explain your handle.
Oh my gosh. I regret this handle so much. Like 5-6 years ago, Shai thought this would be the best handle for me. And I've had to explain this so many times. Shai and Becky both have middle names. I do not. I was not given one. I was named after my grandfather, the clothing designer. And he didn't have a middle name, so I didn't get a middle name. But I clearly felt slighted as a child. Yeah. And with my Latin inspiration and our Latin roots, I gave myself the brilliant nickname of Chi-Chi.
I love it.
Yes, so do I, and so did I. And then I called myself Lily Chi-Chi Cortman for many years, thinking that made complete sense. And then forgot about it. My cousin grew up hearing me, I guess, with that name, brought it back, only has referred to me as that. Then Becky had kids and thought the best way to troll me would have her children call me that as opposed to my name.
Tia Chi-Chi, right here.
Tia Chi-Chi. So cannot escape it. And then somehow in all of this, Shai was like, your handle should definitely be Chi-Chi Gomez, which is my husband's last name. That's a great Twitter handle. And it's already taken.
Oh,
because it's a great handle.
It's a great handle, Chi-Chi Gomez. So I had to do the K for Corman. So
okay.
That's why I'm Chi-Chi K Gomez.
It's you like a glove.
You can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table, Pancake table on Twitter and Instagram. All the Friday Night Movie shenanigans are at Friday Night Movie, FridayNightMoviePod.com to subscribe to our newsletter that we promise you will barely ever get, which is, who else promises that with their newsletter? That's like a real legit promise. And our theme music, which kicks in post-production, is by What Does It Eat? And we want to thank our incredible guests, Zahida, Pirani. You were just an absolute joy to have with the family. So I just hope we get to do this in person sometime.
I had so much fun. Thank you for having me. And I hope one day we can all get together for a real family dinner.
That would be the dream.
Yes, I would love that.